Welcome to the Be Empowered podcast with your host, Graeme Hopkins. My goal is to help you regain your power by bridging the gap between who you think you are right now and who you really are. In simple language, that is like making your childhood dreams come true. This is for those who want to make an impact in their lives but don't know how to get there. Be ensured, when you know and feel connected to your spiritual mind, you master your work.
So welcome everybody to this episode of the Be Empowered show. I'm your host, Graeme Hopkins. The Be Empowered show is really a conversation between people about what it actually feels like to be empowered. To be connected to your own truth as opposed to feeling separate from it or disconnected to it. Before we begin, I'd like to just add something that we mentioned in the last video that we shared, and that is that I mentioned that I left home in 2003. So I just want to explain that a little bit. I'm actually a commercial airline pilot, and I worked for a company called Ansett Australia for 27 years. And in 2001, that collapsed, and I didn't have work for probably 15 months. And in 2003, I was offered a job in Malta, and I left on short notice, left the family, as I said, on short notice. So it was a great shock to the family, and that's what we meant by the fact that I left home. So, Rach, welcome to the show again. I just thought I'd better explain to people what I meant by left home, because that can have different meanings to different people, of course.
Absolutely.
And how are you today, Rach?
I'm fantastic, thank you. And you?
So, yeah, I'm feeling really, really good. And Rach, what I'd like to do is start looking at some of those questions that people have been sending us regarding the Be Empowered show and what it means to be empowered. So maybe we could start off by you reading out the first question so that we can answer it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a question here. I've watched some of your videos, and to be honest, your teaching doesn't appear to be any different from any other personal development material out there. Is this an accurate assessment?
Well, it's a good question, actually, because on the surface it may not appear to be any different, but I've got a really, really good analogy, Rach, that I want to share with you today that may help you see that it is completely different to a lot of what's out there. So remember in the last video we talked about this internal map of reality and this conceptual box. Well, today I'd like to just put that and use an analogy with this bottle. And I want to kind of make this the same principles as what we were talking about in the last video, in that think of this bottle as that box that we drew, yeah? So it represents our identity, how we see ourselves. And you may notice, Rach, that, I don't know if you can see it, but there's just a little drop in that bottle down the bottom.
Yes.
And if you think about that drop in relation to the full volume of what could be in that bottle, you would say that that's insignificant, yeah? And that's how we tend to see ourselves. We see ourselves and we actually feel insignificant. And that's where a lot of our problems arise, because what what is happening here, and this is what I want to explain, Rach, is that we have this truth that's coming to us from outside of the bottle. And as I said in the previous video, we are receivers and transmitters of information. Now, I personally think that this truth is made up of three things. It's made up of energy, it's made up of intelligence, and it's made up of intellect. And when it comes to us, these three things, which I'll just call truth, is pure and it's true. There is no distortion. And what happens is that when we create our internal map of reality, or our ego, is another way of saying it, when it comes and it passes through the exterior of that bottle. Now, just for the illustration purposes, let's visualize that that bottle is glass. Now, when light hits glass, it refracts, and you get diffusion of the light. In other words, if you think of the rainbow, that is just a diffraction or diffusion of light into many different colours. But that's just the colours we can see. There's thousands of light frequencies in there. And that's basically what happens when we form our own identity, our own internal map of reality. And what we then see, instead of seeing the truth as it truly is, we see a perspective of it, or a distorted representation of that truth. And because it's all distorted and diffused, we see just a part of the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like that is a form of our filtering process. We only see what we can see.
Exactly. Have you ever noticed, Rach, that when you read something, you actually filter out everything that you don't believe and you receive everything that you do believe?
Yeah, absolutely. And that happens to us constantly on a moment-to-moment basis.
Excellent. Yeah, we all do it.
Yeah. And they do say that thousands and thousands of information is thrown at us from our environment every day, and we just take a percentile of that.
That's it. So because we're not seeing ourselves according to our truth, we're only seeing ourselves as a fraction of it, if you like, and we see ourselves as insignificant. Now, this creates needs within our being. And think of everything in this bottle, this empty space, as being our needs. And what we tend to do, Rach, is that we tend to go outside of ourselves to try to fill that need. Because what I want you to do now is I want you to visualize something else. I want you to visualize that this bottle is now dropped into, say, the Pacific Ocean, right out in the middle. Now, the significance of this analogy is that we see ourselves as separate from the ocean. We see ourselves as just a mere drop, when in reality we're a part of the ocean, but we've isolated ourselves, through our own perceptions, our own ego, our own way of trying to defend ourselves. So the ocean is made up of trillions and trillions of drops of water. And the truth that's hitting the ocean is pure and true. It's not filtered in our mind. And that's why I said in the last video that our mind is so important, because the more our mind is connected to that truth, the less refraction goes on. And it's almost like the light becomes like a laser beam. I don't know if you know much about laser, but laser actually goes straight through the glass and is not dispersed in any way.
Mm.
So how's this relate to us in a practical way? Well, whenever we make a judgment about ourselves and we feel insignificant and we feel separate from the truth, we create a charge. And all of that charge is within this bottle range. Yeah? So that's what I call duality.
What do you mean by charge?
Well, anything in this realm in which we live has a negative and positive charge, and that creates things like the magnetic field, for instance. That's just a fact. That's a reality. But when it comes to impacting our inner being, then it can actually work against us, because we are the most effective when we don't carry a charge, when we actually feel neutral inside. In other words, we're neutral when everything is in alignment. So when we feel a charge, we're actually creating that within the bottle. So your question regarding personal development, right? Let's take that. So often what happens in personal development is that we go to a seminar and we build ourselves up. So our ego gets built up, and that finishes on a Sunday afternoon. We go home and we go back to work, and something happens and we get knocked down. So our whole life becomes like a seesaw, if you like, of ups and downs. That's created by the charge inside of us. So one minute we feel built up, and the next minute we feel knocked down, not worthy, insignificant. Yeah?
That's an emotional charge that you're speaking of.
Exactly, because emotion is energy in motion. And our feelings are a perception of that. So if we are experiencing a charge in our energy, then we're going to feel that, and then we label it in some form of feeling, like I am angry, or I am sad. Nothing wrong with any of those feelings, but when we add significant charge to us, then it starts to work against us, not for us.
Yeah. So going back to this, the difference here with the personal development and what you're experiencing on a day-to-day level with the ups and downs, how does what you're saying differ from that personal development that may take you through those highs and lows?
Yeah, great question. What I'm saying is possible is that you and I, anybody, can move outside of that bottle, outside of feeling insignificant, into the ocean and become one with it. Because this is all about feeling separate from it, Rach. It's not a fact. It is an illusion. The reality is that we're not separate from it. The illusion is that we feel separate from it. So a lot of personal development, a lot of what you find in religion, it's all done inside the bottle. And what I'm saying,
examples of what you're saying with being done inside of the bottle?
Examples?
Yes.
Well, you take any experience where you go to a seminar or you go to church, and it's all to do with making you feel better, but it's all to do in the short term. So that's why it's building you up in the short term, and you feel great, you know. You leave church feeling great, and on the way to the car, you have an argument with your wife, and your 4 kids run amok. And now life's working against you. And so your ego is either building you up or knocking you down. And that is all happening inside this bottle. So my new paradigm is that we need to move outside the bottle. The old paradigm is do something to make yourself feel good inside the bottle.
Yeah, or essentially change the shape of the bottle rather than move outside of it completely.
Exactly. And that's what the ego does. When people are moving in ego, all they're doing is making this bottle bigger. But they still are separate from. It's very important because
it's an interesting one because it's something that's used a lot, especially in the personal development world. What is your definition of ego? And what is its role as well in our lives?
I personally believe it's a great question, by the way. We'll have to do another video on this, Rach, but just in simple terms, I believe that our ego is a distortion of, because remember I said that everything in the bottle is a distortion of the truth, which has no distortion. Our small ego, our diminished ego, is a distortion of our greater ego, which is that truth. Does that make sense?
Or of the ocean, the greater ego being that ocean, and our own personal individual ego being the bottle, who we think we are outside of it.
Totally. You got it.
This the concept of separation is also something I wanted to ask you about. What are some areas of our lives or some things that we are feeling separate from? Could you expand on that a bit more? So what does it mean to be in separation?
Well, once again, the feeling of separation is really everything that happens in this bottle is division, because it's dividing us up into separate identities in order to feel some sense of worth and some sense of acceptance, yeah? Because I just want to go back and explain something. What happens is that people are in their own identity, their own bottle, and they look out into the ocean and they see that they should be like that. Yeah? This is what creates the gap, because they have the vision of being something that they're not, and they don't know how to get there. Yeah? What we're trying to create at Be Empowered is practical means on how to get outside of that bottle and feel oneness, feel at one with oneself and one with our Creator.
So using that terminology of separateness, you're saying that people are feeling separate from who they desire to be, from who they acknowledge that they can be, and therefore you're bringing them to that place where they're no longer separate from that person.
Yeah. I think a lot of people know deep down that they could be more than what they're producing at any particular point in time. Because there's a void within all of us that needs filling. That's that need. That's that need in that bottle. Yeah. We create the need.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see that vast ocean, and you know the immensity of it, and the possibility, the potential there. So it's no wonders we feel that way when we're stuck inside of the bottle.
Exactly. But the whole point is that this is the exciting part of it, Rach, is it's an illusion. It's not true.
Mm.
And it doesn't take much to change something that is only distorted. You see, we think that we're so far gone and we have to work so hard in order to feel accepted that it's almost an impossibility.
Mm.
And this is where a lot of the world is at.
Yeah.
And what we're saying is that that is not true.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, we're literally, in the case of that bottle, you're literally just that little bit away from being one with that ocean. You know, just open the lid of that bottle and let it out.
Absolutely.
Simple.
When you know the truth will set you free. That's what it means. The truth is we're not insignificant. The truth is that we are worthy. That's the truth.
Mm. And how powerful as well what you just said before about the fact that it's an illusion, that we're not anything but worthy or capable, that we're not anything but that ocean, completely expansive.
Yeah. And I think we could finish up by saying, Rach, that this reality is what has overcome a lot of your illness.
Mm.
It's your acceptance that you are somebody who is worthy and significant that has enabled you to overcome that which you were experiencing out of separation and feeling insignificant. Yeah?
Mm. And I think that just in you saying that, it can be too overlooked. You know, it's like, oh yeah, just accept worthiness or self-esteem and all of that they're little things. But in the case of, you know, health is being separate from being healthy, being someone that can live in well-being. And I think that's as you say, that's where that separation was. And once I changed my perspective to being someone who was already there, that there wasn't that gigantic step between me being unwell and me being well, then it wasn't that much of an issue.
Exactly. And look at the radiance on your face now. It's marvellous.
Thank you.
So, thanks everyone for joining us today. This paradigm is maybe a lot different to what you have been used to, and sure, it takes time to get your head around it, then your heart, and to actually feel unconditionally loved. But that's what it's all about. So thanks for your time. If any of you have got anything out of this today, I'll just ask you a favour to go to iTunes and leave a review there. That means our ratings will increase and more people will get to connect with this good news. Yeah. If you'd like to hear more about what Rachel and I have shared today, you can always go to Amazon and download our ebook there called The Manifesto of Your Inspirational Mind. Or there's another free ebook at www.beempoweredgroup.com, which is called Know Your True Value and Worth. And I think, Rach, I think you'd agree that everything that we've spoken today is about that, knowing your own true value and worth. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's what it boils down to.
So on behalf of Rachel and I, we'd just like to thank you on behalf of the Be Empowered Group and my wife Susanna for being with us, and we wish you a wonderful future of prosperity, well-being and abundance. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Be Empowered podcast. For more on regaining your power by bridging that gap between who you think you are right now and who you really are, go to www.beempoweredgroup.com and enter your name and email address to receive a free ebook and get notified of any upcoming podcasts. Remember, when you know and feel connected to your spiritual mind, you master your world. Changing your energy transforms your life.